a Wilder Show bonus episode. I'll tell you why in a sec. WilderShow.com is where you find us on the web. Podcast@WilderShow.com is how you contact us. Podcast@WilderShow.com. The Wilder Show podcast drops Tuesday and Friday mornings, 6 o'clock a.m. Central Time, and does so at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. But we do reserve the right to overserve.
Which usually means something different than what we mean. This is a positive thing.
Yes, it's a positive. We're doing more than what we. That's Lauren, and so I'm Scott. That's Lauren. Mm-hmm. This is a Wilder Show podcast, and if you've never heard it before, welcome. I used to say this on the radio all the time. We're glad you're here, which we are. But we weren't, Lauren, intending to talk about this for no reason. We just didn't really fall into what we normally do.
Right.
In part because it was in our lives almost 3 decades ago. Mm-hmm. But on request to give our thoughts on this, we thought we would do a little bonus episode and say a word about a place we used to work that just a week ago went out of existence. Right. After 40 years. Mm-hmm. And it is the radio station in Dallas-Fort Worth, KLTY. Right. You and I were both working at KVIL in Dallas before either of us worked at KLTY.
Right, which is also not a thing.
At this rate, it's just anymore. A 103.7 now or whatever, but it's not what it used to be.
Right.
Oh my gosh, what is and who is?
That's
but
true.
Anyway, it's not what it used to be. So we were both working at KVIL at the time. I went over to a station that became KLTY, mm-hmm. and was the program director there at the very beginning, and they were looking for somebody, a female voice, to be part of the morning show. And I said, I know somebody that I think is pretty smart, and set up the time for you to talk to the powers that be. Right. And you were hired. So
I was, yeah.
I was program director there. You worked on the air there in the mornings. I worked on the air middays and many times in the mornings.
That's right.
As schedules sometimes could change because of weather or whatever. And so did that for a long time, for mm-hmm. almost a decade, did that. And then we left there and did something else. But we just say a word about that time on the radio. It was a contemporary Christian radio station. Right. It grew to be, at the time, the most listened to Christian radio station in America. Mm-hmm. A lot of stations that ran or that played Christian music were what's called non-coms or non-commercial stations. But this was a commercial station. Right. And so it was one that ran commercials, but also, played Christian music. And it was sort of a novel time. I mean, the artists at that time were very early Michael W. Smith stuff. Mm-hmm. Very early. Amy Grant stuff.
Early Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Early Steve, back in the Mohawk or the
mullet.
The mullet, yeah. He was the Stephen Curtis Chapman, young mullet wearing I Will Be Here and all those songs. This is the Great Adventure and all those songs.
Hey, I remember I have a really significant story about Stephen Curtis Chapman that I still think about all the time, even to this day. I bet you remember this because it was you and I at the radio station on a Saturday at KLTY. Mm-hmm. We were there specifically because Stephen Curtis Chapman, a very, very young Stephen Curtis Chapman. This was late 80s. He was going to be in concert at a play. Probably at Footloose. Remember Footloose?
I do.
And he was there. He was coming to. You were gonna interview him and record it, so we could run it during the week. And he came all by himself. No, he was never an entourage guy, but nobody with him. All by himself. His guitar in in his case over his shoulder, and we had brought like lunch food, sandwiches and potato chips, and we made him lunch, and we sat in the little kitchen at the radio station and ate lunch, and then he played his guitar and did a little interview with you. I think that was the first time I'd ever met anybody that was on that side of the industry, and I'm such a wonderful guy and so humble, and I know he is just that way now, but I think of that all the time, all those years ago.
That's a great Great story. I think of a time when Rich Mullins was at the radio station and rest his soul. And Rich was doodling on a piece of paper, and we ended up framing it and putting it. Remember this?
I do.
We ended up framing it and putting it in the hallway. And we were, what is he doodling? And he was drawing by memory a map of the United States.
Yeah.
And he wrote on there, America, at best as I can remember it. And that was before he had the album.
It was at the same time, I think, wasn't
was
it?
it?
The world as best as I remember it.
I thought it was more formative than that. I thought that was before that, and then later it turns out that was actually the title of the album. I'd have to go back and know for sure. Then it's not as special as I thought. I thought that was.
No, I thought it was still pretty special because it was a freehand drawing of the United States of America.
It was all the states, and it just said America best as I
remember it.
Best as I remember it. Anyway, Twyla Paris. I mean, I remember those olden times. I mean, really is old days. It wasn't the second chapter of Acts in Keith Green days.
It's a little
bit post that, but not much. I mean, those songs were still, some of those songs were still in what we called our deeper cuts, our G1s, G2s,
That's
or
right.
maybe our PGs, our Power Golds. They'd be in those categories. Power Golds, top, bottom of the hour, of course. And followed by the A's, B at the bottom of the hour.
Yep.
And so those were just the things that we did for a period of time. And it was formative. It was good. We both had adds and subtractions from our families while we were there doing that.
Yeah,
we had
significant.
Gave birth. First time I ever said on the radio, the world just got a little wilder, was when my daughter Caroline was born.
That's right.
We lost both of our dads.
We did.
The same year while we were working on the air there. I still remember the day after I found out the bad news about my dad's terminal and very quick diagnosis.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Sitting at my desk.
Well, I filled in that morning.
Yeah, but you came in and sat down at my desk
did.
and told me your really
bad
heavy news. And
I mean, I remember filling in that morning, and it was all I could do to get up and do a break on the radio. I didn't talk about it on the radio. So I'd get up and do the break, and Lauren would go and run the board. So I would get up and I would go sit in the corner and really collapse, just collapse. And then she'd say, "Come on, you got to do a break." And I'd get up and I'd go to the break and do the happy talk and talk about the history of the corn dog or whatever we were talking about. At the time, right. Whatever the happy talk was and the weather and all that. And then I'd go back and collapse. Yeah. So anyway, that was a big part of our life for a period of time. And then, of course, we went on to do the talk thing, and that became a sort of a different thing. So
sure.
Anyway, thoughts about those days. I mean, it was fun. We did the remote broadcast. I guess I would just say probably a thank you to Marcos Rodriguez.
Definitely.
That's the shout out that I would give, because Marcos was a great guy, and he took a risk. He had a very good business going on, and he said, I wanted to do this other thing, and he did it.
And we benefited from that.
We sure did.
In so many ways. It was a really, really sweet time. It was a job that I never in a million years would have thought I'd have the opportunity to do. And had two sweet babies during that time, and learned so much and got to do a lot of really cool things. Yeah. It was a very sweet chapter of my life.
Yeah, well, Marcos Rodriguez Jr. or Mark Rodriguez, he was very patient with me. I probably wasn't the easiest person, probably not the best person to have as an employee. It was youthful energy and youthful exuberance, not tempered by very much.
Okay.
It was not. There wasn't much of a governor on me at the time, and he was very patient with me. I probably wasn't the easiest person, probably not the best person to have as an employee.
You were passionate about the way you thought things
very much
should
so.
be or could be done in the best possible way.
That could have been expressed better, I'm sure. But I was who I was at the time, and I would certainly have done it differently if I had that. But that could be said of almost our whole lives, right?
Sure.
But he was very patient, I thought, with me, and probably kept me when I would have not kept me. And so, and I think we had a great product. I don't mean as a result of me being there, but hopefully. And I was a part of a great product on the radio. And anyway, it goes on. The format has not changed. The people that were there are not there, and that is tough.
That's a bummer anytime
Because
that happens.
and especially in radio is a tough thing anyway. For people who don't know, it can be a very vagabond like existence. I know the afternoon guy there, who by the way just got a gig somewhere else, but the afternoon guy there, there was a picture of him waving as he first was hired.
Yeah.
He didn't know those 5 fingers were the number of months he would be there until it would go away.
Yeah.
And it was actually 4 months after he got there. So it can be a very tough way of living if you're going to make that your way of making a living. And so we're sorry for that for our friends. We still have friends there and that are now having to figure out what they're going to do, but they will. We did, and people do. And so they will find their way. The hard thing is that happened to Salem Communications they sold all of the music stations.
Yeah.
Now you and I in our current way of doing things, we work every year with the Contemporary Christian Monster station in Atlanta, Fish Atlanta. We work every year with Fish Sacramento.
Yep.
Worked every year with Fish Honolulu, or Fish Hawaii, and we also worked every year with Fish
Cleveland.
Yeah, with Lynn and Sarah.
Right.
So whether it's Kevin and Taylor, or Lynn and Sarah, or Tisha in the old days in Hawaii, we worked a lot there at those stations.
We did.
And those stations are also gone. So all of those have been sold to EMF, it's Education something Foundation, and EMF runs KLOV, KLOVE, KLOV. And so if you tune in over there, you'll hear the same kind of music, but you're not going to hear commercials, which you say is a really good thing, but they are a non-com, which means you're going to hear the fundraisers and the friend raisers and all that. Now, I've not listened to how they do those, but I know that they do them at enough stations and have been successful enough that I'm sure they're done tastefully. And we know people that are there too. We've had friends there for many, many years. So we wish them well. We wish our friends well from the KLTY days. And the audience is going to be okay, though.
Oh, I think so.
The audience is going to find the music that they love.
They still have great music to listen to in the same place that they were finding it before.
Yeah, but they'll miss the people.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a more mournful thing. Not that obviously if you lose your gig, it's mournful enough. But it would be a more mournful thing if that format went away.
Right.
If that format died and then it went to some other format, that would be tough. But EMF will find a way. They'll find a way to make it great, and they don't really need to. I mean, they're making it great around the country. But it's like a jukebox. I mean, you're not going to have a local morning show. Not going to have a local, no matter what it sounds like on the radio. They're not local people doing this or not local people doing anything. They kind of jukebox it in, and that's not bad necessarily. But I can get some of that stuff on my Spotify.
Right.
And I don't have any fundraisers there. So who knows what the future of radio generally is. But certainly this is, Salem decided that's not a niche. That's not a channel we're going to stay in anymore. And, it may be good for the tree unless you're one of the branches at the curb. If your format is a branch at the curb, you go, well, I'm glad the tree's happy, but look at me. I'm waiting for this guy to grind me up.
Yeah.
And that's the way it feels sort of, for people that are out. But it was, we actually, there was a final day, I think they did last week.
About a week ago.
And neither of us were able to participate in it. We were just working. We had other things going on. But so we weren't really a part of that. But that doesn't mean that place wasn't a part of it's part of our story. It's part of our history. Part of our individual stories and part of our story together.
Right.
So it's just a part of who we are. So we wish them well, all the folks who were impacted directly and those who listen and they miss it. We understand. Now, we do welcome you to our little part of the world for the conversations that we share here every Tuesday and Friday. The Wilder Show podcasts drop Tuesdays and Fridays, 6 a.m. on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeart, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. So we welcome you. We're glad you're here. So find us online at wildershow.com. Or if you want to drop us a note, we appreciate that. Those emails you can send to podcast@wildershow.com.
Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da.